Flamengo sells one of football's oldest promises. Send us your boy, trust the badge, and maybe one day we send back a star. But in 2019, 10 teenage players died inside Flamengo's own training ground. That is the story. And it gets worse the closer you look. Because this was not just a fire. It was a test of what one of football's biggest clubs actually did with the children placed in its care. And by the time the fire came, too many warnings had already been sitting there in plain sight. Flamengo is supposed to be a dream factory. In 2019, 10 boys died inside that factory. They were not stars yet. That is what makes it worse. They were teenagers living at the academy, trusting one of the biggest clubs in Brazil to keep them safe while they chased a future. So this is not just a tragedy story. It is an accountability story. Because when children die in club housing, the first question is not fate, it is responsibility. February 8, 2019, a fire at Flamengo's Ninho do Urubu training center killed 10 youth players and injured 3 others. Football loves academy mythology. A scout finds a kid. The family dares to dream. The badge becomes a bridge to another life. But hidden inside that dream is a very simple obligation. If you bring children into your system, you protect them. Not loosely, not eventually, not on the honor system. You protect them. And when the club is Flamengo, the obligation is even heavier. This is not a poor amateur setup improvising at the edge of survival. This is one of the biggest clubs in South America. A club big enough to be taken seriously every time it talks about standards. That is why the details of this story are so damning. The blaze did not begin in some ceremonial part of the club. It began where the boys slept. According to reporting from the Associated Press, the burned structure was being used as lodging for academy teenagers, even though the area was licensed as a parking lot, not a dormitory. The club had used container-style quarters there for years. Just that fact alone should stop you. One of Brazil's most powerful clubs had boys sleeping in a space that authorities did not recognize as proper accommodation. And the details around that space were worse. AP reported one exit, bars on some windows, questions over whether basic protective systems were really there in the way they should have been. You do not need poetic language here. The setup speaks for itself. After the fire, club officials talked about bad luck and a catastrophic sequence of events. But that frame is too easy, because this facility had a history. According to AP, Flamengo had been fined 31 times over licensing violations in previous years. In 2015, state prosecutors filed a lawsuit demanding changes tied to the treatment of academy players and the adequacy of the accommodation facilities. In 2017, the training complex was even temporarily closed. So this was not an immaculate institution blindsided by one impossible night. This was a famous club operating with repeated warning signs around the same broader question. Were these boys being housed in conditions worthy of the trust placed in the club? That is the real issue. Not whether fate was cruel, whether responsibility was weak. Investigators examined whether an air conditioning unit caught fire after a power surge. One survivor said the air conditioner in his room caught fire and that he managed to run. That detail matters because it strips away the temptation to think this required some unimaginable scenario. It may have started with an ordinary appliance. A building meant for children should be able to survive ordinary failure. A place with safe design, proper exits, real oversight, and serious planning should not turn a malfunction into a mass death event. When 10 boys die in a fire like that, the true story is rarely just ignition. It is the environment the fire entered. 10 boys. That should not become a football statistic. 10 families said yes to the academy dream. 10 families trusted the badge. 10 families believed that elite club meant adult supervision, basic competence, and physical safety. Instead, they were left with funerals. This is why the story is so morally difficult. These were not employees making cynical trade-offs. They were minors living inside a system designed by adults. The responsibility was never symmetrical. It was absolute. Football is very good at symbolic grief, black ribbons, moments of silence, statements about pain. But symbolic grief is cheap if it is not followed by honest accountability. The real questions are harder. Who approved the dorm conditions? Who tolerated irregular use of the space? Who allowed the warning signs to pile up without forcing a final correction? And once 10 boys died, who actually paid a serious price? Because if the answers stay blurred, football learns the wrong lesson. It learns that a big badge can survive almost anything, even when children cannot. The reason this story matters beyond one club is terrifyingly simple. If Flamengo could fail like this, then the danger is not limited to one institution. It becomes a wider football question. How many academies ask poor or ambitious families for trust they have not really earned? How many clubs speak the language of development while treating protection as secondary? How many unsafe arrangements stay invisible because the boys inside them are not famous yet? That is the part football does not love confronting. The dream pipeline depends on children entering adult systems long before they have adult power, which means the moral test is not talent production, it is care. Flamengo's lost generation is not just a story about mourning, it is a story about what happens when prestige disguises negligence. A giant club was trusted with boys. Warnings existed. The space they slept in was deeply questionable. Then the fire came. And once those facts sit together, the story stops sounding like misfortune and starts sounding like institutional failure.
That is why this tragedy still matters. Not because football has never seen grief before, but because it exposed a basic truth too clearly to ignore. If clubs profit from dreams, they inherit responsibility for the children who carry those dreams. 10 boys died under Flamengo's roof. That should remain the most important sentence in the whole story. Not because it is dramatic, because it is clarifying. It tells you what football owes young players. It tells you what excuses are no longer good enough. And it tells you that a club does not become world-class by selling hope. It becomes world-class by proving it can protect the people whose hope it lives on. And in this story, Flamengo failed that test.